Thank you so much, Will.
Oh, no problem.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience, and I hope you all received an email from me just a moment ago. We had a few technical difficulties with our YouTube feed, and so I really appreciate your patience with me and putting together this webinar tonight. We are going to give everyone just a couple minutes since I just had to change the location of the webinar. So we're going to give folks a few minutes, then I'm going to introduce our guest speaker tonight, and we can get started. So let's just give it a couple minutes. I'm going to go ahead and mute my, and Will, I'm going to mute you as well, okay? Thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. We are just waiting a few moments since I had to resend a new link for this webinar. My apologies, we had a little bit of technical difficulty on my end. So we are just giving folks a few minutes to come into the room, and then we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give one more minute to see if folks can redirect to this spot. Our apologies. I had some technical difficulties with the YouTube. So hopefully all is fixed now, and we'll be able to have our fantastic webinar coming up, but we'll just give it about 30 more seconds and then get started. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. My apologies. We had some issues with our YouTube on my end, and I really appreciate those of you who stuck it out and were able to find your way here to our live stream tonight. We are going to get started because I know we were supposed to start 20 minutes ago, and it's Wednesday. We've got a lot going on in our day-to-day lives, so I want to make sure we don't take up too much of your time this evening. But I just want to thank everybody for coming. Tonight, we are going to hear about Georgia Grasslands Initiative iNaturalist project. And this webinar is brought to you by the Georgia Native Plant Society. My name is Nikki Belmonte, and I'm the new Executive Director of GMPS. For those of you who are not members of Georgia Native Plant Society, I want to welcome you to our community. GMPS is a member-supported nonprofit organization with chapters throughout the state. Our programs span across three main areas of work: education, conservation, and advocacy. We offer a variety of activities such as educational programs, an annual symposium, native plant habitat certification, plant rescues, plant propagation, habitat restoration, and educational garden projects. To learn more about us, I encourage you to visit our website at gnps.org and also follow us and our chapters on social media. We need you to help us build a better landscape in Georgia, so please check us out and get involved. I do want to thank everyone again for tuning in to learn about Georgia's imperiled grasslands and this important community science opportunity that will help improve the future for this critical habitat. At GMPS, we strive to work with partners to elevate efforts such as this one that prioritize the conservation and the stewardship of Georgia's native plants and their habitats. It takes teamwork for conservation to succeed, and we can all be a part of that success. So a couple quick notes about tonight's presentation, besides the fact that we're on a new channel. This is a live stream event and it is being recorded. So for those who don't get to watch it tonight, it should be available on our YouTube channel a couple of days after this broadcast. There will be time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. You can type your questions into the chat box when you think of it, and at the end, I'll read them aloud for Will to answer. And so it's time to get started. So let me introduce our speaker for tonight. Will Rogers is a research professional at the University of Georgia and the State Botanical Garden of Georgia. He specializes in rare and endangered plant species. Will is a native of South Georgia, where he developed a knack for noting strange and unusual relationships in the natural world. His career in plant biology began as he was obtaining a psychology degree at UGA. He worked on his research for 17 years in the plant biology department, with the last 10 of those years focusing on Sarracenia, known as pitcher plants. He joined the State Botanical Gardens in late 2017, where his work focuses on sampling and genetically analyzing rare and endangered plants and their more common widespread congeners. Will, thank you so much for being here tonight, and I truly appreciate your patience. I am going to go ahead and turn the stage over to you.
Thank you, Nikki. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you guys tonight. First, I should say thank you for having me as your dinner date tonight. I'm going to talk to you tonight about a project that we have with the U.S. Forest Service documenting native plant species on federal lands in Georgia. So it's a direct to the public presentation. We're asking you guys to just go out to the National Forest and photo document. I love the presentation because you guys can start as early as tomorrow as we can do time. So we're just asking you to get to the National Forest and help us document native plants. All right, so we're gonna go over what we're asking you to do, why we're asking you to do it, and how we're gonna get it done. If you look at this map out west, this shows all the lands in red that are federally owned. And so I'm going to use federal and public lands interchangeably. So if you look out west, for instance, the state of Nevada is mostly federally owned. And then if you look east of the Mississippi, in Georgia in particular, very little land is publicly owned. Most of it is privately owned. So that translates into 93% privately owned in the state of Georgia, with only 5% of the land here federal or publicly owned. And that's where we're asking you guys to go. So in green here, up in North Georgia mainly, you can see that we have the National Forest. Used to be Chattahoochee and Oconee, now it's hyphenated Chattahoochee Oconee National Forest. So most of it is located in far North Georgia. And just about 45, 50 minutes south of Athens, there's a sliver of federal land, and a little bit south of that, there's some more. So basically, the areas in green right here is where we're asking all of the Georgians that want to participate to go out and photo document. So if you look here, the areas in green are all the federal lands, and kind of interwoven sometimes there's private land. So if you're out there and you see a fence or a mailbox, that's a good designation for private land. So we're asking you not to trespass and just to get to the areas that are federally owned. So just be careful not to trespass. And some of the areas can be kind of landlocked and you have to access the federal lands sort of in a roundabout way, but for the most part, when I've been out, I get there pretty easily. So the goal, inclusion, we want to involve as many segments as of the population as possible. I presented to birders and college students, minority groups, hikers, bikers, fishermen, boaters. Anybody can do this. And it's very simple. I'm not tech savvy. And so I like to say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And the purpose is to generate data. So the federal government wants to generate as much data and documentation on their lands as possible. So they're looking for native wildflowers and grasses mainly that are occurring on federal lands in Georgia. But what's out there? A lot. And so in the last 2.5 years that I've gone out, seen many different plant species. So a lot of milkweed, which is very important now. As you know, monarchs are hot in the news right now. So the documentations that you guys do for Asclepias or milkweed can be utilized by different groups trying to protect monarchs. They can kind of utilize that data also. But I've seen black-eyed Susan, seen Marshallia, just a lot of different plant species out there that I come across. A few more, and I should say I'm no Olin Mills, but I take pretty good photographs with my smartphone out there. So these are some more species that I've come across. Even blueberries. So I got to one area, looked around, and there was a lot of ground cover. And I was like, what is that? And so I took a photo and kind of lifted up a little bit and saw blueberries. And then I remember that bears like blueberries. And so I took the photos and kind of skedaddled out of the area. But that was one of my coolest finds out there, a patch of blueberries. We're going to do this using iNaturalist, and it's really taken off in the last few years. So iNaturalist is this project or program started by a group of folks, I think they're out of California, and it's now worldwide. So there are hundreds of thousands of members. There are tons of different projects on there. And so the U.S. Forest Service partnered with the State Botanical Garden at the University of Georgia to create a project to utilize regular Georgia citizens to get out there and photo document. So the name of our project is Georgia Grasslands Initiative, GGI. And so when you go to iNaturalist, you can just type that into the search box and it'll take you to our webpage and you can join up via that link. So if we were in person, I usually take this handout with me, and it's just a pretty straightforward way to show you how to join. Find iNaturalist, type in Georgia Grasslands Initiative into the search box. It takes you to our little page down there, Georgia Grasslands Initiative, to the far left at the bottom. And in the middle there, that's going to change, like the look of the page. Right now, I think I'm featured, which I hope that changes very soon. So I hope to feature in the future different documenters from Georgia as the face of our page. And so that was the page up until about 2 weeks ago. And our tech savvy member of the group, Zach, put me on there, which was a bit of a surprise to me. But now if you look there, I'm there. And then if you look to the far right, there's a blue box that says, yes, I want to join, and you just click on that and you'll be a member. So as of yesterday, we had 153 members, which is way up from spring of 2021 when we started out with 6 people. So you guys have really been joining. I've traveled over 6,200 miles for documentations as well as on the road presentations to different groups in Georgia. I've been down to south of Savannah, up to the mountains. So I've been all over Georgia, giving the presentation and documenting. We have over 42,000 observations so far with 2,500 species. But once you join, you'll get a personal page. And so this is my page from 2021. And each little square shows you where I had gone as of like May 2021. And so each square represents a documentation. And if you scroll over one of those squares, it kind of highlights what species you documented and when. And so that list to the right there with all the different plant species shows you what the orange squares would represent. So what have we achieved? Someone from our group found a new EO for Echinacea purpurea. So that's a very uncommon species within the state of Georgia. I think there were only 3 or 4 documented populations of that. And we had a member to discover a new population, and Georgia DNR was very interested in that. And so they are working with that documenter and a landowner to keep track of that population. We're providing important milkweed data for different monarch projects. I was down south of Savannah, and some folks down there were tracking the different groups of monarchs that transverse our country, and as they head down to Central America. So they're interested in milkweed and where we're seeing those in the state of Georgia. Someone found a new EO for Helianthus smithii, which is a rare species. And they're always documenting different rare uncommon species such as Massalia, Sarracenia, Symphiatricum. And we ask you, if you do come across something that's rare, to cloak that location to protect, don't want any poaching or whatnot to happen. So sometimes you will come across a rare orchid or a pitcher plant or something special. So we ask you to cloak that or hide that specific GPS data from the general public. This slide just shows you what one person can do. So this is my personal slide to the far left back in 2021. And at the same time, I kind of screenshot the 12 of us there next to that, what we had done as a group in the same amount of time. Later that year in the fall, we had gotten up to 41 members. And so you can see Georgia really started to fill in orange by that time. And then this year in May, with 129 members, you can see Georgia's really turning orange. So you guys are really getting out there and documenting. And so I know I said the national forest lands, which are up in far north Georgia, the feds have sort of an all lands approach, however. So while we're focusing on the national forest, they are welcoming data from all over the state. So if you're roadside down in South Georgia, my neck of the woods, the documentation is helpful and it keeps a roster of what's growing there. And we can kind of triangulate and pull out the data just from the national forest, which is what they're interested in. But the data that you guys in South Georgia and Far East and West Georgia are sending in, the state can use that data as well. And like I said before, right now we have 153 members, and hopefully that'll go up tonight after you guys start joining. So the purpose is to gather information. So things like what species are present in specific locations. They can pull out flowering times. They can look at when seeds are maturing. They can see what species are commonly occurring together and kind of get an idea of what soil types are in the different regions. And then over time, they can look at if certain species have declined or increased in a certain area. And the project is a little bit older, of course, now than it was 2 years ago. And so as time goes on, they can use this data in ways that they don't even understand or know right now. But in 5 years or so, 5 years of data can be used in a lot of different ways. And like I said, some ways they might not even know right now. So why should you be interested? So it's believed that this part of the country used to be way more open, that the dense forest that we see now came about after European settlement. And so they believe prior to European settlement that it was a lot more grasslands present and that not as much dense tree cover was present. And so when you go out to the national forest and you're on the Forest Service road, the plants, the native grasses and wildflowers that you're seeing there are kind of clinging onto the roadsides because they're open, and that's where the sunlight's kind of peering down. And so we think that those native species are clinging to the roadsides because that represents sort of what used to be, where it was way more sunny and more open. So we're asking that you go out with 2 to 4 people. We don't want you to go out alone because, you know, a lot can happen. You are in nature, so there are spiders and stinging insects and holes. And so you always want to have your buddy out there just in case anything goes wrong or something happens. So no more than 4 people, because a large group, you can imagine, we're humans, so we're chatty. And if there's a large group out there, you're going to do a lot more damage, more than likely, with trampling. And you know, we chat and we're not focused in on the task at hand. So we're asking that you take 2 to 4 people with you and be careful not to damage the plants and to be stewards of the land and friends of nature. So the criteria for documentation: the plants must be native, sun-loving wildflowers or grasses. We are welcoming some pollinator data. So if you see a cool insect or a bee, that's fine. And some wildlife if you are so inspired. I've taken a picture of a few snakes out and some box turtles. We're trying to steer people to Forest Service lands. And so roadside, power line right-of-ways, and open forest areas. We're not encouraging you to take pictures in flower beds or landscape floral photos. So not at Lowe's or your personal flower garden. So we really want natural habitat and plants that are naturally occurring. And we ask that if you're encountering something rare or endangered, that you hide that location or make it private. So when you're out, you'll need your smartphone. I always have a wide brim hat because, well, it's been very hot, so it's been very hot. I always have a wide brim hat. I wear a safety vest, but you can wear brightly colored clothes, any emergency medication, inhalers or EpiPens, and always take food and water with you. So we're recommending at least take 16 ounces of water for every hour that you plan to be away from home, and to drink. Even though if you're not thirsty, always drink periodically to keep yourself hydrated. So how to photo document. So we've all taken pictures, and it's pretty simple and straightforward. But for this project, we're asking you to get in there and get some detail. So we want you to get clear photos of the plant stems and flowers, basal leaves, or the rosettes. And basal, that's just if you look around at the plant, and at the base of the plant, there's like a circular bundle of leaves or whatnot. That can be important data to help the algorithm and iNaturalist identify the species for you. And so any kind of traits such as hair or petioles or leaf characteristics, and then your own iNaturalist, and it allows more than 4 photos. So definitely take multiple photos and upload those so the site can help ID the species. This is a good example. The picture to the far left, if you just snap and go, it can get kind of lost. So the plant is in there, but you can't see very much detail. So we're asking you to get in there and get to the basal rosette, which is the second picture, and the floral traits of the plant. And if any stems or leaves are present along the stems, also get those in there. So the algorithm in the site could ID this plant species just from that single leaf at the bottom, because it's a very distinctive leaf, and it came right back as Salvia lyrata. This is one of my favorite plant species I've come across. So I was taking a picture of this. It's a pretty distinctive leaf. And I was about to move on, and I looked down, and it was a little, almost looked like an exploded acorn on the ground. And so I was like, what is that? And I gave it a little tug, and it was actually a part of the plant. And it's little brown jugs, go figure. And so that was actually part of the plant. So definitely be sure to kind of look around and note that you're getting all parts of the plant. Vines can be tricky. So sometimes vines will crawl and creep and wrap around different plants. And so you'll actually be photographing 2 different plant species in that photo. And so that's happened a couple of times. So you just want to be sure that no strange vine or different plant species is also in your photo. Sunflowers are surprisingly tricky. So there are over 50 species of sunflower, and they're native to America. And so to the left here, it's just kind of showing you to get in there and take a picture of the flower. And so petal count can be a really good indicator of the species of sunflower that you're dealing with. And also that stem to the right there, a petiole, or the little, see if you can see this. A petiole is basically a leaf with a little stem here that attaches to the main stem. So some plants will have a petiole and some plants won't. So the leaf will be directly attached to that stem. And so showing a trait such as that will be very important to helping the algorithm. And I should mention too that the 153 members of the project also come behind each other, and we help each other identify. So you upload your photo, the site will give you an ID automatically. And then one of your group members, one of your project members will come behind you and confirm that ID and get you to research status or research grade. And so it's really a team effort. And I should say right now, our top documenter is Botanylicious. She's way out front. I think she has like 5,000, so no one's ever gonna catch her. And our greatest helper is Pukek. And if you upload your photo, Pukek is going to be there within 2 hours to help you identify that species. So those are my two most notable members of the group. And I haven't met either one of them, but I know they're always there. And Pukek, like I said, is always going to help you identify your plant species. So these are two more examples of sunflowers. So if you look to the left, hopefully you guys can see that that one is hairy. It looks like a caveman's leg. So that's a very distinctive photograph. And the one to the right is smooth. Glaucus and glabros are smooth and kind of has a white coating on it. Also, the one to the left, the leaves are sessile. So the leaves are attaching directly to the main stem. And the one on the right, the leaves have a petiole. And so that petiole is attaching the leaf to the stem. So the sunflower species on the left is Helianthus hirsutus. Hirsutus means hairy. And the one on the right is Helianthus strumosus. And that's one of the most confused species pair on the site. The algorithm is getting better all along. And so it's getting really good now at determining the differences between these species. It's not perfect. And so the species to the far left here is Lismachia quadrifolia. The one to the far right is Coreopsis major. And the one in the middle, we don't know what that is. And it still is a mystery. And so it looks sort of intermediate. I can see some traits from both. And so if you send something in and it's not readily identified, that's okay. Hopefully at some point, one of the group members will be like, aha, I know what that is. But this is one in the middle that has not been clarified just yet. So when I started the botanical garden, I was on an NSF project studying reasons for rarity, where I had to go out and collect leaf tissue for a species of sunflower that was rare and a species that was common. And so this slide is just showing you how the same species can look different depending on what population you're in. So the one to the far left is from Maryland. The one in the middle there, one is from Alabama, one is from Stephens County, Georgia. One looks like almost an ace of spade. It's kind of smooth on the edge. Some of them have toothed or serrated edges. So same species, but sometimes the phenotypical traits can vary a little bit. So it can get kind of confusing, but like I said, iNaturalist will identify it automatically for you. So we're asking that as you're on public lands to park clearly off the road. One of my first trips out, an 18-wheeler actually came through. So I was off the road, so I was able to pass, but we're asking that you park clearly off the road. Avoid areas where debris has fallen, or if there's a fire that has happened, a controlled burn. We're asking you to avoid those areas. So the next couple of slides were one of my first two trips out back in 2021. So I was mindful to park off the road. And if you haven't been to a Forest Service road, this is pretty typical. So sort of a gravel road. And the cool thing is we're not asking you guys to actually go into the forest. We're just asking you to kind of document along that roadside. So you'll park, get out, suit up, and then kind of walk that road. And the plants that you're documenting are actually growing off. Remember, I told you they love sunlight. So the sun is peering down there. So you just walk that road and document as you go. Now that picture to the right, I did get out to check first because I didn't want to get stuck. So it looks like I just parked at Publix or something, but I did make sure there wasn't a hole there. And so I was able to pull kind of into that parking spot with no problem, clearly off the road. The very first time I went out, I was a little excited and I parked the Botany mobile. And I jumped out, grabbed my stuff, and I looked, and there was a side access road that I was blocking. And so I had to get back into the car and back up so that anyone needing to access the side road could clearly get in and easily get out. And so we're asking just to, once you park, to look around and be sure you're not blocking any access. Also look for any fences or mailboxes, because as I said before, that can designate private land. So we want you to avoid that area. Second trip out, I was on the move and made a turn and smelled smoke. And so this was an area that had been recently burned, and I meant like within a couple of days, and you can't see it, but off to the left And the picture on the right, I could see like hot spots, like smoke billowing up. So I always say you don't want to be on the bad side of a fire. So I just kind of left that area. And then I got to a different area and a tree had fallen across the road. And so I thought to maybe park and just kind of hop over the tree and keep going. But then I thought that maybe a crew might be on the way to remove that tree. And you don't want to be in the way of equipment if they're trying to kind of remove debris from a road. So I just left the area. And of course, if you see something like that, we're asking you to leave the area also. Once again, this is how you join. Just get to iNaturalist and look up Georgia Grasslands Initiative and click on join. And yes, I want to join, and then you'll be a group member. We are all tech savvy now, or on my end a little bit anyway. So there are apps for your phone. So iNaturalist app for your phone will look like that. And then there's Seek by iNaturalist, which has been described to me as the kindergarten version of iNaturalist. And it is very kind of basic. It gives you the idea of the plant. And last year it wasn't as great. This year it is getting better. So it would, if you took a picture and sent it to Seek, it would sometimes come back as dicot, which isn't very helpful. But it is getting better every year at getting to specific IDs. But we're asking most of you or all of you to go to iNaturalist and join that website. Once you join, we have an about section, so you can read up on that and get a lot of useful information about what we're doing and how to keep yourself safe out there. And so we're asking that you all, once you join, please read the about section. And we're updating it all the time. Some of that was kind of put in there during the heat of COVID. And so I think there might be some information in there about driving in the car together, but it might have been updated by this point. I've actually gone out and done a lot of presentations. So I try to do about 10 a year. And this is from last year and this year. So I've presented to different chapters of the Georgia Native Plant Society. I did the Audubon Society last September or last October. And I also did the Athens Science Cafe this year in February, I think. And so at that point, that was my largest crowd ever and a record for Athens Science Cafe. I think 72 people showed up, which they were really excited to break their record. We have educational videos on the way, an introduction, travel and roadside safety, how to photograph, wildlife safety, and how to use iNaturalist. And we're making the public aware through rollout like this and me being on the road and giving the presentation. And it's word of mouth. So most of the presentations that I've given have come about from someone who attended a former presentation. So if some of you guys know of a group that you would maybe want me to present to or that you think would be interested, you can email me and we'll set something up and I can travel there and you can kind of get to the group leader and put something together and I'll actually present to that group. We're asking you to be safe and responsible. Don't damage or remove any signs of public property, and definitely don't ever harm or bother any of the animals, plants, flowers, or seeds on the land. It's extremely important that they remain there, so don't remove any wildlife or plants from the land. This is our team, our director, Jenny Cruz Sanders, Dr. Affolter, who recently retired, Heather Alley, Jennifer Seska, me, Cora, who is the director of the education department, who is instrumental in helping me get different gigs and presentations. We have Insectival coming up at the State Botanical Garden, and I'll have a booth there. And so I think we have like 2,000 folks that show up. And so that's going to be my next big gig. And Cora is the organizer of that. Zach Wood is our techie member. And so keeping the website fresh and techie needs, Zach is very good at that. Katie McCullum is the curator of the Children's Garden at the State Botanical Garden, and she is helped with video. So she did, I think, wildlife safety video for us. And Melanie Flood is our newest member, and so she's out there. We work kind of hand in hand. She has a direct project with the Forest Service, and so the documentations that I find out when I'm out, I can pass along to her. And I would like to thank U.S. Forest Service, Joan Baggs, Duke Rankin, Mark Bestrain, and Robin Mackey, as well as the Chattahoochee Oconee National Forest. They've been very accommodating and welcoming, so it's been great. But if you want to be featured, I've started this collage. And so if you send a photo of you photographing while you're out, you and your buddy can take photos of each other documenting and send that to me, and I will add it to the collage. My email address is bonjour@uga.edu. So if you have any questions, or if you want to set up something in the future for a presentation, please email me. And so that was the face of our page up until 2 weeks ago. Now I'm on there, but that is how you get to us. And hopefully you've enjoyed the presentations and I can questions. And hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Will. This is a great slide for us to stop on, because one of the questions here was, where do I go on iNaturalist? So as you can all see, the URL is right at the top of this slide. And upon finishing the recording and sending it out, I will make sure to send out this link, as well as some helpful links from iNaturalist that shows you, for those of you who are new to using iNaturalist, there are some great tutorials that iNaturalist provides that will help you get all techie like Will is. So, Will, we do have a couple of questions here. Heather Brazel and Greg Lewis have a similar question. They had previously been told that this initiative is not just limited to federal lands. Could this activity be done on WMAs? Could it be done on other types of grassland areas?
Yes, so the feds, I call them feds, they have sort of a mild all lands approach. And so the one slide that I showed you where all of Georgia was kind of turning orange with little squares, that's definitely outside of the National Forest Service land. And so we are taking documentations from all over the state, and we can go in there and pull out specific, I think Zach, the techie member of the group, can go in and put in polygons and pull out specific data for specific areas. And so even though all of Georgia is orange, we can go in there and pull out just the Forest Service lands when needed. So definitely if you're out in different parts of Georgia, because I know some of you down in the far southern reaches of Georgia would have trouble getting up to North Georgia. So the country roads down there, we're asking safety first. So definitely not on the side of a road where the speed limit is 65 or whatnot, but the dirt roads and country roads where the speed limit is lower. If you're out and want to photo document, that data is welcome too.
Great, thank you. Kaylee Rickman wants to know, can you post through the Seek app? So if you start in Seek, you take your picture in Seek, does it automatically go into the iNaturalist project? Does that happen?
So to my knowledge, that does not happen. So Seek is owned by iNaturalist, but it is different. And I kind of said it was the kindergarten version of iNaturalist. So I think Seek was just kind of a personal kind of documentation for you where you keep track of different species. It kind of counts for you and shows you what you've sent in, but that data does not go to our iNaturalist project. And so we're asking that you join iNaturalist and then join our project in iNaturalist to get that data sent there.
Great. As far as I understand, since I'm a big Seek user, you can save your observations in iNat and then you can assign it to a project, but I think it's two separate actions. So Kaylee had a follow-up. Is there something specific we have to do to attach our observations to the project in iNaturalist?
So once, and I'm not entirely sure, once, like if you join iNaturalist and you're a member of a lot of different groups, I think you have to kind of go in iNaturalist and be specific and sure that you're in our group, in our project, Georgia Grasslands Initiative. And I think once you start documenting, once you've logged in and designated that you're documenting for us, it should go to our project. That's how it's worked in the past or whatnot. And I know some things can get, so I'm an Android user, and iPhone users were having sort of a different experience sometimes. And so I'm not too familiar what Apple phones do, but I don't think it's too complicated to figure out any differences between the two platforms.
Okay, great. The Piedmont Gardener wants to know, which grass species are you mostly seeing up there? And I'm guessing up in the Chattahoochee National Forest. What are you mostly seeing up there for grass species besides Schizachyrum? My apologies, I cannot pronounce these Latin words.
Yeah, I have a Southern drawl. The older I get, the more it comes out. So I can't pronounce them either. So there's a lot of switchgrass. There's little blue stem, big blue stem. And I should say grasses are intimidating. Like a lot of people have to use actually a key to key them out. And they're difficult to photograph sometimes. So sometimes you need, I'm gonna tinker around with having a backdrop or a black or white backdrop to try to get more detail, because it's kind of hard to focus your phone in on the blades of grass or whatnot. So grasses are tricky. And it takes a while for sometimes for you to get an accurate ID from group members. We are working on, we have Melanie Flood actually from the slide before, the newer member of our team, is really good at keying things out and really good with grasses. And so I'm going to utilize her skills. But yeah, I'm not great with grasses. And I actually haven't photographed as many. That's been one of my goals this year, to get more grasses. And so, like I said, I'm going out now with a backdrop to try to get clearer photos. But definitely a lot of blue stem and that species that we can't pronounce.
You mentioned keys. Do you have any recommendations for folks going out there to look at the grasses specifically, of any keys that work well for you?
Let me see. There's follow with Melanie. So you might have to email me with that one, because Melanie is our go-to key person, and she has a whole roster there in the office of different keys that she utilizes. But yeah, there's I'm gonna think of his name, and when I think of it, I'll shout it out and get back to it. But,
that sounds good.
He's one of the top botanists in the country, and he actually has a key, and so he is utilized by a lot of different people. So I'll think about it and get back to you with his key.
Sounds great. Yeah, follow-up is just fine. Are there specific parts of, this is a question in the chat, are there specific parts that are good to get up close pictures of to differentiate, okay, we're getting specific here, between white-leaf mountain mint and hoary mountain mint?
Oh, so the mountain mints, that's a tricky one. And so I should say some of these species are so close and so confusing, like some of the phlox, some of the mountain mints, that you might just get to the genus. And so you might have trouble getting to the actual species, because another retired botanist at the Botanical Garden, Linda Chafin, I've seen her actually whip out a microscope and kind of look at the different plant parts for that species in particular. And so she had 4 different ones, and she was given a tutorial. And so to get a microscope to have to kind of tease apart the different traits is a bit out of my league. And so just realize for some of these plant species, you'll get to genus and maybe not down to species.
Great.
And that's one of them.
So we have another question here. Is there a map or a list of federal lands we could potentially have access to by county?
Let's see. So go back up here. Might still be active. So this slide's a little bit older, but there was a link here. So at the bottom there, and And two, you can go to the U.S. Forest Service website, and it'll list the different areas that they have control over. And two, once you become a member, and so my name on there is Pitcher Plant Power. And so if you click on me and look at my documentations, you'll actually get GPS data that shows you exactly where I've been and exactly where I went. And of course, for any of your group members. And so just click on their documentations, get the GPS data. And I use Google Maps. And so just put those GPS coordinates in there and it'll take you directly to the Forest Service road. And once you get there, you just kind of explore around and try out different roads that you come across when you're up there. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think that's good. And I think we can include that in the follow-up.
Okay.
If anyone has any last questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat box. We are going to wrap up in a minute or so. So Will,
I have his name, Weekly. His name is Weekly. Weekly.
Okay.
So anything that he does or anything that he recommends, go for it. He's like one of the top botanists in the country.
Do you happen to if you Google for that resource, would you be able to come up with it? Or, I mean, this seems like something we can follow up with afterwards. But is this something that folks can find readily on their own, or is this something that's is hidden?
So I'm a direct, like whenever I'm trying to search for something, I always type in exactly what I'm looking for. So his name is Alan Weekly, and just type in Alan Weekly and Botanical key, and I'm sure to list the different keys that he's utilized or what could be recommended by him. So that's
fantastic. And we actually have a comment, his full name, Alan Weekly at UNC Herbarium Flora. So we can include that in the follow-up. So if there's any last questions, type them in and we will get your last questions answered. Will, I do have a question. So you said you were going to be giving a presentation at the State Botanical Garden upcoming. Is that a public event that you were talking about?
Yes, it's insectival, and okay. It is it's a yearly event. It's really cool. They so I'm kind of a picky eater, but they have like insect cuisine. So they have like mealworm, I don't know, Chex Mix. And so they have ant coated desserts and all this kind of thing, utilizing, and cricket powder cookies and all this kind of stuff. So kids usually love it because it's that ill factor, but yes, insectival. And if you go to the website, State Botanical Garden website, it'll tell you all about that, as well as the other events that we have coming up there. So definitely go to our website, and it's on there. I think it's next month.
Great. And I do just want to ask this for those who follow the plant community on social media. Do you have a social handle that you want people to follow, or is there a social handle for UGA for the Bot Garden that you'd like people to follow?
I think if you go to the website, like there should be a media link and whatnot, how to follow us on Twitter and whatnot. I, in my personal life, try to avoid social media. And so there are links on the website to our different presences on different social media platforms. And I should say Insectival is September 30th at the State Botanical Garden.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I think that wraps up all our questions for tonight. If you who are tuned in and watching, you think of another question, I will be sending out a follow-up with the recording of this live stream with some of the items we talked about this evening, as well as Will's contact information. So folks can reach out directly to him with specific questions. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I very much appreciate your patience. And I hope everyone has and stay cool, everyone. It is real hot out there. So if you do start iNatting, please make sure you are taking precautions, staying in the shadier part of the grasslands, drinking water, and protecting yourself out there.
Now, interrupt you one quick second. So
sure.
I will say that's a good point, because starting, I get to the sites about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and starting around about 11:30, it's starting to get hot and the plants start to droop a little bit, and so they don't make as great photos. And so I'm usually out of the field by 11:30 in the morning. And so I would recommend that for you guys also.
Oh, that's a great piece of advice. I didn't even consider the droopiness of the plants in this weather. It's totally true. Thanks, Will. We did actually have one last question come in. Are private lands acceptable for logging iNat observations for this project?
So that's a good question. So if it's your private land, yes, but just be cognizant that it gives GPS data. And so that's gonna pinpoint like that spot on your private land. And so that documentation will show up on iNaturalist. And so if it's your private land and you document and you want it cloaked, just hide that location. But you can do that, but just hide the location if you don't want the general public to know where that spot is.
Great. And of course, if you're on someone else's land, you have to be very mindful of where you're parking your car, right?
Yes.
Boundaries. Excellent. Well, thank you, Will, so much for sharing all your knowledge and this amazing way that we can all help do conservation with you. Folks, I will be sending out a follow-up later on this week with this recording of the live stream, and as well as some of the notes that we were talking about during the program. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye. Okay, we're off.